The summit began the next morning under the flat white lights of the outpost's conference hall. Long tables had been arranged in a wide circle, and each delegation sat behind their species banner. The Zoroth Dominion's banner was deep violet with a silver crown. The Sylvari Collective's was green and gold, woven with patterns that seemed to move if you stared at them long enough. The Kreth Federation's was a plain red square with a black fist at its center, and Humanity's was a simple blue field with a white star. Danny stood near the back wall in his usual guard position. He watched everything. Ambassador Laura Finch opened the summit with a careful and respectful speech. She spoke about cooperation, shared exploration, and the future of the Galactic Union. Her words were warm but measured, the kind of language built to offend no one and promise nothing too specific. It was good diplomacy, and Danny respected her for it. Then it was the Zoroth Dominion's turn. General Dren Vosar stood first and delivered a short statement about the strength of the Dominion and its commitment to galactic order. His words were stiff and military, each one placed like a brick in a wall. He sat down without smiling. Vaisha stood next. She was dressed in silver and white, and when she moved, the fabric rippled like water. She spoke in a voice that was smooth and confident, and carried a blade hidden beneath every sentence. She talked about the long history of the Zorath people, their contributions to science and culture, their role in bringing stability to the galaxy. And then, without changing her tone at all, she turned her attention to humanity. "We welcome our human friends to this summit," she said, and the word friends landed with the weight of a stone dropped from a great height. They are still new to the galactic stage, still learning. We must be patient with them as one is patient with a child learning to walk. We hope that in time they will find their place, however small that place may be. Several human delegates shifted in their seats. Laura Finch kept her expression perfectly still. Danny, standing in the back, did not move at all. The morning sessions were filled with arguments over trade routes, mining rights, and territorial boundaries. The Zorath pushed hard on a proposal that would restrict human access to 3 sectors in the Outer Rim, areas rich in rare minerals and energy sources. Laura Finch pushed back with data and reason. The Sylvari stayed neutral. The Kreth stayed quiet. During the midday break, Danny walked the outpost perimeter alone. He needed air, and he needed to think. He knew the summit was a stage play. The real decisions would not be made in that room. They would be made in the shadows, where the true shape of power lived. His earpiece clicked softly. Sam Hadley's voice came through. Priority transmission, from the inside. Karen is on the line. Danny changed direction and headed for the hidden room. Within 2 minutes, he was underground, standing before the holographic display. Karen Price appeared on the screen. She was a small woman with dark hair and sharp brown eyes, and she looked tired. She had been living inside the Zorath royal court for 3 years, posing as a cultural exchange scholar while feeding intelligence back to the Obsidian Accord. It was dangerous work, and it showed on her face. "Danny, I do not have much time," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I found something. The Dominion is not just pushing for territorial restrictions at the summit. They are preparing a military operation." Danny's expression did not change. "Tell me." "It is called Operation Bright Silence. 3 attack fleets are being assembled at staging points along the Outer Rim. Their targets are Haven, New Bristol, and Shepherd's Gate, 3 human colony worlds. The plan is to strike while the summit is still in session, so no one can respond in time." Danny stood still for a long moment. Haven had a population of 400,000 people. New Bristol had close to 1 million. Shepherd's Gate was smaller, but it was home to one of humanity's most important agricultural stations, feeding a dozen other colonies. "When do they launch?" he asked. "The orders could come at any time, maybe 2 days, maybe less. Dren Vosar is the operational commander, but I think the Emperor does not know the full scope." This might be Dren's play, not the throne's. That changes things, Danny said quietly. Get safe, Karen. If you think your cover is at risk, activate the extraction protocol. Do not wait. Karen nodded, and the screen went dark. Danny stood alone in the glow of the star map. 3 colony worlds, millions of lives, and a clock that was already ticking. He opened channels to the Obsidian Accord's command network. His orders went out in a stream of quiet, precise instructions. The 7th Shadow Fleet, already in position near Caldera, was redirected toward Haven. The 9th Fleet, stationed in a hidden base inside a nebula that the Zorath did not even know existed, was ordered to move toward New Bristol. The 12th Fleet would cover Shepherd's Gate. And the 1st Vanguard, the largest and most powerful fleet in the Accord's armada, was given a special assignment: position itself directly behind the Zorath home fleet, deep in Dominion space where no one would expect a human ship to be. It was a move that said, without a single word, we can touch your heart whenever we choose. He finished his orders and climbed back up to the outpost. The afternoon sun was low and orange, and the dust was thicker than usual. He walked back to his post outside the conference hall and stood there as if nothing had happened. The afternoon session resumed. More arguments, more posturing. Dren Vosar seemed more relaxed than he had been in the morning, and Danny understood why. The general thought his secret operation was running smoothly. He thought the humans had no idea what was coming. During a short recess, Vaisha found Danny again. She seemed drawn to him, the way some people are drawn to things they do not understand but refuse to respect. She walked up to him with 2 of her attendants trailing behind. "Still standing here, dust soldier?" she said. "Still here, Your Highness," Danny said. She studied his face. "You are a strange human. Your soldiers look at you differently than they look at each other. They step aside when you walk. They wait for you to sit before they sit. Why is that?" Danny met her gaze. "Maybe they are just polite." Vaisha smiled. "It is something else. But I cannot figure out what." She tilted her head. "In the Dominion, a man of your rank would not be allowed to clean the floors of a warship. You would be nothing, less than nothing." Danny looked at her for a moment. Then he said, "Every floor needs cleaning, Your Highness, even the ones you cannot see." Vaisha's smile faltered. Something about those words scratched at the surface of her certainty, like a small crack in a window pane. But she was too proud to let it show. She turned and walked away, without another word. Sam Hadley appeared at Danny's side a moment later. "She keeps coming back to you." "She senses something she cannot explain," Danny said. "That bothers her more than anything." "Should we be worried?" Danny shook his head slowly. "Not about her. About what happens in the next 48 hours. That evening, General Dren Vosar was seen in a quiet corner of the outpost, speaking into a secure communicator with a look of grim satisfaction on his scarred face. His intelligence officers had noticed an increase in human communication traffic, and had tried to trace it, but every signal they followed dissolved into nothing. The Obsidian Accord's encryption was built on principles the Zorath had never encountered, layered through quantum channels that folded in on themselves like origami made of light. Dren frowned at the empty results on his screen. Something was not right, but he could not put his finger on what it was. He dismissed the thought and returned to his quarters, confident that Operation Bright Silence would proceed as planned. Far away in the darkness between stars, 4 human fleets moved through space like shadows, crossing a wall. They made no sound. They carried enough firepower to reshape the map of the galaxy. And they all answered to a sergeant standing in the dust on a forgotten world, holding a cup of bad coffee and watching the stars come out one by one. Danny sipped his coffee and waited. Patience was a weapon most people never learned to use. He had learned it a long time ago, and it had never failed. The 3rd day of the summit started like the others, with polite words and hidden knives. But Danny could feel the air changing. Something was about to break, and he knew it the way a sailor knows a storm before the clouds appear. He was right. The morning session was 20 minutes old when Sam Hadley slipped into the hall and caught Danny's eye. The look on Sam's face said everything. Danny stepped out of the hall without a word and followed Sam down the corridor to a storage room where they could speak without being heard. "Karen's gone dark," Sam said. His voice was tight. "She sent one last burst transmission before her signal cut out. I think her cover is blown." Danny took the data chip Sam handed him and plugged it into a portable reader. Karen's final message was short and urgent. The Zorath fleet assigned to Operation Bright Silence had launched early. Not in 2 days. Now. 3 attack forces were already moving toward Haven, New Bristol, and Shepherd's Gate at full speed. Estimated time to reach the colony worlds was 14 hours. And Karen was gone, captured, running, or worse. Danny did not know which. For the first time in as long as Sam could remember, something shifted behind Danny's eyes. It was not panic. It was not anger. It was something colder and deeper, like watching a river suddenly change direction. "Stay here," Danny said. "Keep things normal in the hall. I need 10 minutes. He moved through the outpost at a pace that was just short of running. Down the corridor, through the sealed maintenance door, down the hidden staircase, into the command center beneath the station. The holographic displays lit up around him like a constellation coming to life. Danny placed his hands on the command console and began issuing orders. His voice was low and steady, each word placed with the precision of a surgeon. 7th Shadow Fleet, redirect to Haven. Full combat deployment. Intercept the Zorath attack force before it enters orbit. 9th Fleet, proceed to New Bristol at maximum speed. Engage on arrival. 12th Fleet, hold position at Shepherd's Gate and prepare defensive formation. He paused for half a second, then continued. 1st Vanguard, execute silent approach. Take position directly behind the Zorath home fleet at coordinates 774 Mark 12. Do not engage, do not reveal yourselves, but be ready. The confirmations came back within seconds. Green lights flickered across the star map as 4 hidden fleets began to move. Danny watched the lights shift and calculated distances, timing, and outcomes in his head. The math was tight. The 7th Fleet would reach Haven with less than 2 hours to spare. The 9th Fleet had a wider margin for New Bristol. The 12th was already close to Shepherd's Gate, and the 1st Vanguard would be in position behind the Zorath home fleet before the Dominion even knew there was a battle happening. He opened one more channel. Nate Bishop's face appeared, already dressed for war. "I saw the orders," Nate said. "We are moving." "Karen is dark," Danny said. Nate's jaw tightened. "I will send an extraction team to her last known position. Do it fast, and Nate, when the fleets engage, I want it clean. Disable their ships if possible. I do not want a massacre. I want a message." "Understood. What about you?" Danny looked at the star map one more time, then he said something he had not said in a very long time. "I am going upstairs, and I am going to stop being a sergeant." He climbed the stairs, sealed the hidden room behind him, and walked back toward the conference hall. But this time, something about him was different. The way he moved had changed. His steps were longer, more deliberate. His posture was straighter. His eyes, which had always been calm, were now calm in a way that carried weight, like the surface of deep water. He found Laura Finch outside the hall and spoke to her privately for 60 seconds. Her face changed 3 times during that conversation, moving from confusion to shock to sharp understanding. She nodded once and walked back into the hall with the look of a woman who had just been given a very powerful weapon and was about to use it. Laura requested an emergency session. The delegations reassembled with murmurs of confusion. The Silvari delegate looked curious. The Kreth representative looked annoyed. General Dren Vosar looked calm, but there was a small flicker of something behind his eyes. Laura stood and addressed the assembly. I must bring an urgent matter before this body. We have received confirmed intelligence that the Zorath Dominion has launched a military operation against 3 human colony worlds while this summit is in session. The room erupted. The Sylvari delegate rose to her feet. The Kreth representative leaned forward. Dren Vosar's face turned to stone. Laura presented the evidence with cold precision. Communication intercepts, fleet trajectory data, operational codes. All of it verified, all of it undeniable. The attack fleets had launched from Zorath staging points less than 6 hours ago. Dren stood and denied everything. His voice was loud and hard and filled with authority. This is a fabrication. Human lies designed to undermine this summit. Then explain these fleet movements, General, Laura said, activating a holographic display that showed the real-time positions of Zorath warships heading directly toward human space. He could not explain it, because it was real, and he knew it was real, because he had given the orders himself. Vaisha sat at the Zorath table and watched all of this unfold with growing horror. She had not known about Operation Bright Silence. She had not known about the attack fleets. She had been sent to the summit to represent the Dominion's cultural authority, not its military ambitions. She looked at Dren, and for the first time, she saw him not as a loyal general, but as a man who had started a war behind her back. But Vaisha was proud, and pride does not bend easily. She stood and spoke. Even if these fleet movements are real, the Dominion has historic claims to those sectors. Humans have no right to occupy Zorath ancestral space. Those colonies have been established for 80 years, Laura replied. Families live there. Children go to school there. People call those worlds home. That does not make them yours, Vaisha said. It was at that moment that Danny Cole walked into the conference hall. He was still wearing his sergeant's uniform. The same dusty gray fabric, the same plain rank patch. But the man inside the uniform had changed. Every pair of eyes in the room turned toward him, and every one of them felt it, even if they could not explain what it was. He walked to the center of the room and stood between the delegations. Laura stepped aside without being asked. My name is Danny Cole, he said. His voice was not loud. It did not need to be. It filled every corner of the room, the way deep water fills a valley. And I am about to tell you something that will change your understanding of this galaxy. He activated the holographic display with a small device he took from his pocket. The star map expanded to fill the entire hall, glowing blue and white above the heads of every delegate. For over 100 years, Danny said, humanity has maintained a hidden network of empires, fleets, and intelligence operations across uncharted space. We call it the Obsidian Accord. It was built in silence. It was grown in patience. And it exists for one reason, to make sure that no one, not the Dominion, not anyone, can threaten human lives without facing consequences they cannot survive. He touched the display, and the map changed. Hidden star systems appeared, dozens of them, scattered across the galaxy in places no one had thought to look. Shipyards capable of building warships that were decades ahead of anything in the known galaxy. Research stations, intelligence hubs, supply chains that connected worlds the Zorath had never even discovered. Fleet after fleet after fleet, their positions glowing on the map like stars being born. The room was completely silent. General Dren Vosar had gone pale. The Sylvari delegate was whispering something that sounded like a prayer. The Kreth representative sat down heavily, as if his legs had stopped working. Vaisha stared at the map. Then she stared at Danny, the dust soldier, the man she had mocked, laughed at, and dismissed as nothing. He was standing in the center of the most powerful revelation in galactic history, and he was wearing a sergeant's uniform covered in caldera dust. Danny looked directly at her. His eyes were steady, and his voice carried no malice, no triumph, no cruelty, just simple, quiet truth. "You were saying, Your Highness?" Vaisha opened her mouth. No words came out. The hall remained frozen in silence as the holographic map of hidden empires glowed above them all, and at its center, caught in it, without bending, the silence in the conference hall lasted for 12 long seconds. It felt like a year. Then everything happened at once. General Dren Vosar was the first to move. He slammed his fist on the table and shouted at his communications officer in rapid Zorath, demanding confirmation of the fleet positions on Danny's holographic map. The officer's hands were shaking as he worked his console. Seconds later, the blood drained from his face. The map was accurate. Every fleet, every position, every hidden system, it was all real. The Silvari delegate, a graceful woman with emerald skin and silver hair, leaned toward her advisor and spoke in a trembling voice. How did we not know? No one answered her, because there was no answer that made sense. Danny stood in the center of the hall and let the moment breathe. He did not raise his voice. He did not make threats. He simply waited for the truth to settle into the bones of every person in the room. When it had, he spoke again. At this moment, 4 fleets of the Obsidian Accord are responding to the Zorath attack on our colony worlds. The 7th Shadow Fleet is moving to intercept the force heading for Haven. The 9th Fleet is protecting New Bristol. The 12th holds Shepherd's Gate, and the 1st Vanguard has taken a position directly behind the Zorath Home Fleet. Dren Vosar turned slowly to face Danny. His scarred face was a mask of controlled fury, but underneath the fury was something else. Fear. "You are bluffing," Dren said. Danny looked at him the way a teacher looks at a student who has not done his reading. "General, in approximately 2 hours, your attack fleet will arrive at Haven and find 63 warships waiting for them. Ships you have never seen before, using technology you have never encountered. Your fleet will be given one chance to stand down. If they do not, they will be disabled and captured. Not destroyed, disabled. Because I do not want your people's blood on my hands. But I will not allow you to spill ours." Dren opened his mouth to respond, but Vaisha spoke first. "Is this true?" she asked, and her voice was directed not at Danny, but at Dren. "Did you launch an attack on human worlds during a peace summit?" Dren hesitated. That hesitation told Vaisha everything she needed to know. "You fool," she whispered. "You absolute fool." The next 2 hours were the longest anyone in that room had ever experienced. Danny remained in the hall, standing near the holographic display, which now showed real-time fleet movements. The delegates watched in stunned silence as the Accord's shadow fleets converged on the 3 colony worlds. At Haven, the Zorath attack force dropped out of faster-than-light travel, expecting to find an undefended colony of 400,000 civilians. Instead, they found the 7th Shadow Fleet arranged in a crescent formation across their entire approach vector. The human ships were sleek, dark, and built with a design philosophy the Zorath had never seen. They were smaller than the Zorath warships, but moved with a speed and coordination that suggested something beyond simple piloting. They moved like a single organism. The Zorath commander at Haven was given Danny's message: stand down or be disabled. He chose to fight. The battle lasted 41 minutes. The human fleet disassembled the Zorath formation with surgical precision, targeting engines, weapon systems, and communication arrays while leaving the hulls intact. Not a single Zorath ship was destroyed, but every single one was left drifting and powerless. At New Bristol, the Zorath commander was smarter. He took one look at the 9th Fleet waiting for him and ordered an immediate surrender. His fleet powered down their weapons and transmitted a ceasefire signal. Not a single shot was fired. At Shepherd's Gate, the battle was brief and strange. The Zorath force attempted a flanking maneuver that would have worked against any fleet they had ever fought. The 12th Fleet simply was not where they expected it to be. The human ships moved as if they had read the Zorath playbook in advance. Within 30 minutes, the Zorath fleet was surrounded, disabled, and requesting terms. News of all 3 engagements reached the summit in waves. Each report hit Dren Vosar like a physical blow. 3 fleets, the pride of his military career, broken in hours. Then came the final report. The first vanguard had revealed itself to the Zorath home fleet. 200 human warships, each one larger and more advanced than anything in the Dominion's navy, sitting silently behind the Zorath's most important defensive line. They had not fired a single shot. They did not need to. Their presence alone said everything. Dren sat down and did not stand again. A priority communication channel opened in the center of the hall. The face of Emperor Zorath Malvine appeared on the holographic display. He was old and stern, with deep violet eyes, and a crown of black metal resting on his silver head. He had been watching events unfold from the Dominion's capital, and his expression was not one of anger toward humanity. It was one of cold fury directed entirely at his own general. Dren Vosar, the Emperor said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. You launched Operation Bright Silence without my full authorization. You risked this empire. You risked my people. You are stripped of your rank, your titles, and your honor. You will be brought before the Dominion court to answer for what you have done. There was nothing to say. The Emperor then turned his gaze to Danny. For a long moment, the 2 men looked at each other across the holographic connection, separated by hundreds of light years, but connected by the strange gravity that exists between those who hold real power. I would like to speak with you directly, the Emperor said. Not as adversaries, as leaders who must decide what happens next. Danny nodded. I would welcome that conversation, Your Majesty. The channel closed, and the hall slowly began to breathe again. Delegates whispered to each other. Aides scrambled to send reports to their home worlds. The Sylvari delegate approached Laura Finch and spoke in urgent, hopeful tones about an alliance. The Kreth representative sent a message to his government recommending immediate diplomatic overtures to the Obsidian Accord. In the middle of all this movement, Vaisha sat alone at the Zorath table. Her attendants had drifted away to manage the crisis. Dren had been escorted out by his own guards. She sat with her hands folded in front of her and stared at the holographic star map still glowing in the center of the room. All those hidden systems, all those silent fleets, all that power that had been there all along, invisible, patient, and vast beyond anything she had imagined. She asked to speak with Danny privately. He agreed. They met in a small room off the main corridor. No attendants, no guards, just the princess and the sergeant, sitting across from each other at a plain metal table, under the flat white lights of a frontier outpost. Why? Visha asked. It was the only word she could manage at first. Why what, Your Highness? Why hide it? If your people had this power, why not show it? Why let the galaxy treat you as if you were nothing? Danny leaned back in his chair. Because visible power invites attack. Every empire that has stood on a stage and declared itself mighty has eventually been torn down by those who wanted that power for themselves. Humanity learned that lesson early. We decided that the best way to protect our people was not to be feared, but to be underestimated. Vaisha shook her head slowly. I do not understand that. In the Dominion, power is meant to be displayed. It is how we maintain order. And how is that working for you right now? Danny asked. There was no cruelty in his voice. It was a real question. Vaisha looked away. She thought about Dren, launching a war without full authority, because he believed the Dominion's displayed power made it invincible. She thought about her father, scrambling to contain damage from a crisis born of overconfidence. She thought about herself, standing in this very outpost 2 days ago, mocking a man she believed was beneath her, because everything she had been taught told her he was. "When I called you a dust soldier," she said quietly, "why did you not react?" Danny looked at her with those steady eyes. Because strength is not about proving yourself to everyone who doubts you. It is about knowing who you are and acting when it truly matters. Vaishya sat with those words for a long time. The silence between them was not uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that exists when something old is ending and something new has not yet begun. "I was wrong about you," she said finally. "You were wrong about all of us," Danny said gently. "But being wrong is not a crime. Staying wrong is." Before Vaishya could respond, Sam Hadley knocked and entered with news. Karen Price had been found alive. A covert extraction team had pulled her from a detention facility on a Zorath border world. She was injured, with a broken arm and cracked ribs, but she was alive and being treated aboard a medical ship. Danny closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, there was something in them that looked very much like relief. "Thank you, Sam," he said. Sam nodded and left. Danny turned back to Vaishya. "Your father wants to meet," he said. "I think it is time we stopped being enemies and started figuring out what comes next." Vaishya looked at the dust soldier sitting across from her, the most powerful man in the galaxy in a plain gray uniform, and for the first time since she had arrived on this forgotten world, she felt something she had never felt toward a human before. The meeting between Danny Cole and Emperor Zorath Malvine took place the following morning in the Outpost's conference hall. The room had been cleared of all other delegations. Only Danny, Laura Finch, Sam Hadley, the Emperor's holographic projection, and Vaishya were present. It was the smallest and most important meeting the galaxy had seen in a century. The Emperor appeared on the holographic display in full ceremonial robes of deep black and silver. His crown sat heavy on his head, and his violet eyes burned with the kind of intelligence that comes from decades of ruling an empire. He did not look defeated. He looked like a man who had been forced to see the world clearly for the first time in a very long while, and was deciding what to do about it. "I will not pretend that the last 2 days have not changed things," the Emperor began. His voice was deep and resonant, filling the room even through the holographic connection. "My general acted beyond his authority. My fleets were defeated. And I have learned that humanity possesses power that my intelligence services failed to detect for over 100 years. These are not small things." Danny sat across from the projection with his hands resting on the table. He had not changed his uniform. He had not polished his boots or put on any symbol of rank. He was still, to all appearances, a sergeant. "They are not small things," Danny agreed, "but they do not have to be the end of anything. They can be the beginning." The Emperor studied him. "You are an unusual man. I expected anger, demands, perhaps even threats." "Threats are what people use when they are afraid," Danny said. "I am not afraid, Your Majesty, and I do not think you are either. I think we are both men who understand that what happens in this room today will shape the galaxy for generations." Then he inclined his head slightly, and Danny understood that this was a gesture of respect, perhaps the first such gesture any Zorath Emperor had ever given a human. "What are your terms?" the Emperor asked. Danny spoke clearly and simply, the way he always did. "First, full recognition of all human colonies, including those in the Outer Rim sectors your delegation has been trying to restrict. Those worlds belong to the people who built them." The Emperor nodded slowly. "Agreed. Continue." "Second, the immediate release of all human prisoners held by the Dominion. This includes intelligence operatives, civilian detainees, and anyone else held in your facilities." The Emperor's jaw tightened slightly. Danny knew this meant Karen Price and others like her, people the Dominion would have preferred to keep hidden. But the Emperor nodded again. Agreed. Third, Danny said, and he paused here, because he knew this was the demand that would matter most. I want the Zorath Dominion to publicly acknowledge the sovereignty and equal standing of every species in the Galactic Union. Not just humans. All of them. The room went still. Vaisha, sitting to one side, looked at Danny with surprise. She had expected him to use this moment to elevate humanity at the Dominion's expense. Instead, he was asking the Dominion to treat everyone as equals. The Emperor's expression hardened. You are asking me to abandon a core principle of Zorath culture. For thousands of years, we have understood ourselves to be the leading civilization in this galaxy. What you are asking is not just a political concession, it is a cultural revolution. I know exactly what I am asking, Danny said, and I know it will not happen overnight. But the declaration must be made, because if the Dominion continues to treat other species as inferior, eventually one of them will do what we did. They will build something in the dark, and you will not see it coming. I am giving you the chance to change before that happens. The Emperor stared at him for a long time. The silence stretched like a wire pulled tight. Then the Emperor looked at his daughter. Vaisha met his gaze, and after a moment, she nodded. It was a small movement, but it carried the weight of everything she had learned in the last 3 days. The Emperor turned back to Danny. Agreed, he said, but I will need time to prepare my people. Take the time you need, Danny said. Just make sure it happens. The treaty was drafted that afternoon and signed by evening. They called it the Caldera Accord, named after the dusty border world where it was born. It was not a long document. It did not need to be. It established equal standing for all member species of the Galactic Union, created joint security protocols to prevent future unilateral military actions, opened the disputed Outer Rim sectors to shared exploration and settlement, and laid the groundwork for a new era of cooperation. Laura Finch signed for humanity. The Emperor signed for the Dominion. The Sylvari and Kreth delegates, who had been watching everything with a mixture of awe and relief, signed eagerly. For the first time in galactic history, every major species stood on level ground. That evening, as the delegations prepared to depart, Vaisha came to find Danny one last time. He was standing outside the outpost, leaning against the perimeter fence, watching the sun set over the copper-colored desert. The sky was streaked with shades of orange and red and deep purple, and the dust in the air caught the light and made it look like the whole world was glowing. I owe you an apology, Vaisha said. She stood beside him, her silver skin catching the last of the sunlight. Not just for the insults, for the ignorance behind them. I was raised to believe certain things about your species, and I never questioned any of it. That is my failing, and I own it. Danny looked at her. What will you do now? Go home. Try to change things. My father agreed to the accord, but agreements are just words on a page. The real work is in changing how people think, how they see others. That is harder than any battle. It is, Danny said. It is the hardest fight there is. Visha was quiet for a moment. Then she asked the question that had been sitting inside her since the first day. When I called you a dust soldier, did it bother you? Danny looked out at the sunset and thought about it. Then he said, Dust is what is left after stars die, and from dust, new stars are born. I have been called worse things by better enemies, Your Highness. What matters is not what you are called. It is what you build. Vaisha looked at him, and something in her eyes changed. It was not the sharp, cutting gaze of a princess who believed she was above everyone else. It was the open, honest gaze of a person who is seeing someone clearly for the first time. Goodbye, Danny Cole, she said. I do not think the galaxy will forget your name. I would prefer if they did, Danny said. I am not very good at being famous. Something close to a real smile crossed Vaish's face. She turned and walked to her shuttle. She did not look back, but she carried something with her that she had not brought to Caldera. A new way of seeing the galaxy and her place in it. The Zorath ships lifted off one by one, rising into the darkening sky like silver birds heading home. The Sylvari and Kreth delegations followed. Within an hour, the sky above Caldera was empty again, and the outpost was quiet. He went to the mess hall, sat down at his usual table, and ate a plate of powdered eggs and drank a cup of bad coffee. A few soldiers nodded at him. He nodded back. Nobody asked him about the summit, or the fleets, or the treaty. To most of them, he was still just the quiet sergeant who kept things running smoothly. Sam Hadley sat down across from him. "So, do you think the peace will hold?" Danny took a sip of his coffee and thought about it. "I do not know. People are complicated. Empires are complicated. Fear does not disappear because of a piece of paper. Then what do we do? What we have always done. We stay ready. We stay patient. We protect the people who need protecting. And we keep building, whether anyone sees it or not." Sam smiled. "You make it sound simple." "The simple things are usually the hardest," Danny said. Later that night, Danny descended one last time into the command center beneath the outpost. He opened a channel to Nate Bishop. Nate appeared on the screen, looking tired but satisfied. "Karen is recovering well," Nate reported. "She is already asking when she can go back to work." Danny shook his head with a faint smile. "Tell her to rest. She earned it." "And the fleets?" "Pull them back to their hidden positions. Quietly. The galaxy knows we exist now, but they do not need to see our full strength every day. Let them remember, but let them also breathe." Nate nodded. "Understood." "Hey, Danny." "Yes?" "That princess, the one who called you a dust soldier, do you think she will actually change things?" Danny thought about Vaisha, about the arrogance in her voice on the first day, and the honesty in her eyes on the last. "I think she will try. And sometimes, trying is enough to start something that cannot be stopped." Nate smiled, and the channel closed. Danny shut down the command center and climbed back up to the surface. He walked outside into the cool night air of Caldera. The dust had settled for once, and the sky was clear, filled with more stars than any one person could count in a lifetime. Somewhere out there, in hidden shipyards and quiet stations scattered across the galaxy, the men and women of the Obsidian Accord were going about their work. They were teachers and engineers, and soldiers and scientists and explorers. They did not seek glory. They did not demand recognition. They built, and they protected, and they endured, because that was what humans had always done, from the first fire lit in a dark cave to the last ship launched into an unknown sky. Danny stood at the gate of Outpost Bravo 7, a sergeant in a dusty uniform on a forgotten world at the edge of known space. He looked up at the stars and felt the quiet, steady weight of everything he carried. The hidden empires, the silent fleets, the millions of lives depending on decisions made in small rooms by unremarkable men. He did not mind the weight. He had been carrying it for a long time, and his shoulders had never once bent. The wind picked up, carrying the copper-colored dust of Caldera across the yard, across his boots, across the gate where he stood. He let it blow. Dust was nothing to be ashamed of. It was what was left after stars died, and from it, new stars were always born. He finished his coffee, set the cup on the fence post, and stood his watch under a sky full of promises, a dust soldier guarding a galaxy that was only just beginning to understand what humanity really was. The wind on Caldera tasted like copper and dry sand. It blew across the open yard of Outpost Bravo 7 every morning without fail, covering boots, rifles, and window panes in a thin layer of reddish dust. The soldiers stationed there had learned to stop complaining about it a long time ago. It was just part of life on the edge of known space. Danny Cole wiped the dust off his visor and continued walking his morning patrol along the outer fence. He was a man of average height, average build, with short brown hair, and a calm face that never seemed to change expression no matter what was happening around him. His uniform was the same plain gray as every other soldier on the outpost. His rank patch said sergeant. Nothing about him suggested he was anything more than a quiet, dependable man doing a simple job on a forgotten world. And that was exactly how he wanted it. He finished his patrol and walked into the mess hall for breakfast. He nodded back. He sat down with a tray of powdered eggs and coffee that tasted like it had been brewed from engine grease. He ate slowly, watching the room the way he always did, noticing everything without appearing to notice anything. Sam Hadley dropped into the seat across from him. Sam was tall and broad, with a shaved head and sharp green eyes that never missed a detail. He was Danny's second in command, and the only person on the entire outpost who knew the truth about the quiet sergeant sitting across from him. "Got something for you," Sam said, keeping his voice low. He slid a small data chip across the table beneath his palm. "Came in on the deep channel last night." Danny pocketed the chip without looking at it. "Anything urgent?" "Everything is urgent these days," Sam said. He glanced around the mess hall. "The Zorath delegation arrives this afternoon. Place is going to be crawling with aliens who think we are insects." Danny took a sip of his terrible coffee. "Then we will be polite insects." He finished his breakfast and walked to a small storage room at the back of the outpost that had been sealed for maintenance. He locked the door behind him, pressed his thumb against a hidden scanner on the wall, and watched as a section of the floor slid open to reveal a narrow staircase leading underground. The room below was nothing like the dusty outpost above. It was clean, quiet, and filled with technology that did not officially exist. Holographic displays lined the walls, showing star maps, fleet positions, and intelligence reports from dozens of systems across the galaxy. This was the nerve center of something called the Obsidian Accord, a hidden network of human empires that had been growing in secret for over 100 years. And Danny Cole was its sovereign. He inserted the data chip and read the message. The Accord's intelligence network had flagged the upcoming diplomatic summit as dangerous. The Zorath Dominion was pushing for a resolution that would block human expansion into several resource-rich sectors. But the real concern was something deeper. There were whispers of military movement behind the Dominion's diplomatic smile. Danny sent a brief encrypted reply to Nate Bishop, his oldest friend and the fleet admiral of the Accord's hidden armada. The message was simple: stay alert, keep the 7th Shadow Fleet within striking distance, and wait for further orders. He closed the channel, sealed the room, and walked back upstairs to be a sergeant again. That afternoon, the sky above Caldera darkened as the Zorath delegation descended. Their ships were enormous, built from black metal that gleamed like polished obsidian. They moved through the atmosphere with a low hum that vibrated in the chest. The message was clear, even before anyone stepped off the shuttle. "We are powerful. You are not." The shuttle doors opened, and the Zorath walked out in a long procession of guards, attendants, and officials. They were tall, silver-skinned, with sharp features and violet eyes that seemed to glow faintly in the dusty sunlight. At the center of the procession was Princess Vaisha Tylari, the youngest daughter of the Zorath Emperor. She wore a flowing gown of deep blue that shifted color when she moved, and she carried herself with the kind of confidence that comes from a lifetime of being told you are better than everyone else. She looked at Outpost Bravo 7 the way a person might look at a pile of garbage. "This is their station," she said to General Dren Vosar, her military escort. "Loud enough for every human nearby to hear. I'd have seen storage closets with more dignity." Dren, a towering warrior with scars running down the left side of his face, said nothing. He simply watched the humans with careful, calculating eyes. The welcome reception was held in the outpost's largest hall, which had been cleaned and decorated as best as the soldiers could manage. It was still a plain metal room with harsh lighting, but the effort was there. Ambassador Laura Finch, a composed woman with silver-streaked hair and steady hands, greeted the delegations with grace and warmth. Vaisha barely acknowledged her. She walked through the hall inspecting everything with visible disgust, making comments to her attendants about the primitive state of human technology and the dullness of human appearance. Then she saw Danny. He was standing guard near the entrance to the conference corridor, his rifle held in a relaxed position, his face as calm and blank as a still pond. Just another dust-covered soldier in a dust-covered uniform on a dust-covered world. She looked him up and down, the way someone might examine an insect pinned under glass. "What are you?" she asked, her voice carrying across the hall. Several human and alien heads turned. "Sergeant Danny Cole, Your Highness," he said quietly. "Welcome to Outpost Bravo 7. Vaisha tilted her head. A sergeant, a dust soldier on a dust world. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Tell me, dust soldier, does your species truly believe it belongs among the stars? Because from where I stand, you look like creatures who crawled out of the mud and somehow stumbled into space by accident." The hall went silent. Every human in the room felt the insult land like a slap. A few soldiers nearby clenched their jaws. Sam Hadley, standing 10 feet away, tightened his grip on his rifle strap. Danny gave the smallest signal with his left hand. "Stand down." Then he looked at Vaisha with those quiet, steady eyes and said, "We are glad to have you here, Your Highness. I hope the summit goes well." Vaisha laughed. It was a bright, sharp sound, like glass breaking. "It already has, dust soldier. It already has." She turned and walked away, her entourage following like a silver tide. The hall slowly returned to its murmur of conversation. Sam moved closer to Danny and spoke through barely open lips. "I wanted to say something." "I know," Danny said. "She has no idea who she just talked to." "No," Danny agreed. "She does not." That night, long after the outpost had gone quiet and the Zorath delegation had retired to their quarters, Danny descended once more into the hidden room beneath the station. He opened a secure quantum channel, and the holographic image of Nate Bishop appeared before him. Nate was sitting in the command chair of a warship called the Silent Throne, a vessel so large and so advanced that it would make the Zorath flagship look like a fishing boat. "How was the welcome party?" Nate asked, with a grin. "The princess called me a dust soldier," Danny said. Nate laughed softly. "What did you do?" Nate asked. "I welcomed her to the outpost." "That is the most terrifying thing I've ever heard you say." Danny allowed himself a small smile. "Move the 7th Shadow Fleet to position Delta 9. Keep them outside Zorath's sensor range, but close enough to jump in under 4 minutes. And contact Karen Price on the inside. I want to know everything the Dominion is planning before they plan it." Nate's grin faded into the sharp focus of a man who understood exactly what those orders meant. Understood. "Anything else?" Danny looked at the star map glowing before him. Thousands of systems connected by invisible threads that all led back to this one quiet man in a dusty room on a forgotten world. "Yes," he said. "Tell the fleets to wake up. All of them." He closed the channel and stood alone in the blue glow of the holographic display, carrying the weight of hidden empires on shoulders that had never once bent.